Bro, listen.
Never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Getting on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
All right, there's nobody I'd rather have on the podcast right now than Julian McWilliams of the Boston Globe. Nobody on this planet for a lot of reasons. Number one, because he's part of the family. We're embracing him. We're spreading our arms out. So in case you aren't familiar with Julian's work, forget about he does fine work for the Boston Globe. That goes without saying. But his fine work, he did a fill-in podcast for me when I was on a cruise with Edwin Jackson.
Electric.
It was electric. It was like chemistry was off the charts. And that was a test. That was your test. Now, the pool, we've opened the pool. You're jumping on in. Congratulations. What's the name of your Baseballs and Boring podcast?
Name of the podcast will be The Eye Test.
Okay, I like it. You already have a graphic.
Oh yeah.
We have merch.
We will have merch. The merch is coming. The merch is definitely on the way.
Okay.
Stickers too.
Yeah, stickers, t-shirts, the whole ball of wax. When you're part of the family, talk to Johnny Gomes, Courtney Finicum, Reese Green, Bella Geskos, Sean Spradling. It's a powerful, powerful brand, which we got a big announcement coming up about how much more powerful it's getting. But Julie, I'm not just saying this here. I'm here to pump you up. You're good at this. It shouldn't be wasted. Your talent shouldn't be wasted. We want to make sure that you have the proper audience, the proper representation, because you're good at it. So tell me, first of all, why did you name that what you named it?
Well, it's really an idea that I had dating back probably 3 years. It just kind of just been sitting on it for too long. And a couple things happened that that sort of catapulted me into this direction, in terms of, not being able to do certain things and whatever. And then me and Rob were sitting down and, in the fine state of Ohio, having, some water, and, and we started talking about it, but it really came about because I really I felt like, I wouldn't say baseball had been becoming too analytical, but like the conversations had been becoming too analytical. And you had I think scouts, player development people that were sort of traditional that were getting sort of wedged or moved out of the space of baseball, in terms of their jobs and stuff like that. And you always just heard about the eye test, right? Now you have scouts who don't feel like they have to go to games to watch players play, and they can just look at stuff on a spreadsheet or on a data sheet, his contact points and exit velocities, and think they can be able to to sort of pinpoint a player. And the eye test sort of came about where it's there's more to this. It's not necessarily negating everything else that's part of this game today, but it's saying that hey, the development, watching a player matters, seeing a player for yourself matters. Players would tell you that, maybe somebody doesn't show up on a data sheet the same way another player does, but they'll tell you that X player who doesn't show up the same way, they fear playing that player. They fear that player more. I remember I was talking to Xander Bogaerts, and he was we were talking about clutch, being sort of in these clutch situations, how Alex Verdugo had had a thing for the moment, but he's yeah, but I'm still taking Rafael Devers over anybody because it's a fear factor there. You fear him. You don't fear Alex Verdugo necessarily, right? You said there's something when Rafi comes to the plate and he takes a swing where you're I fear this guy. And that's sort of where this sort of idea came about, is like the pulse of the game that I think matters and shouldn't be excluded.
First of all, you get me fired up. Thank you. My
Yeah.
my heart rate is through the roof.
All right.
But it's I think we've talked enough where I think we're on the same page, same wavelength, where we sort of roll our eyes at some of the stuff, and I don't think let's not get this twisted. Like the numbers are a good jumping off point, certainly. But one of the things I want to talk to you about today, we were talking about possible topics that we could talk about today, and I didn't even bring this up to you because I want you to come in fresh. But one of the things is like clubhouse, what the clubhouse means, what a guy in the clubhouse means, what a personality means, what the impact of a voice, a routine. And one of the guys who I know that pretty well, I find really interesting is Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham goes to the White Sox, right?
Yeah.
Now, the reality is that Tommy Pham's going to get traded at the deadline, right? This is
probably most likely, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, in his next 3 months with the White Sox, and maybe we've already seen it because they actually won a couple of games, that people can say, oh, well, Tommy Pham called out the Mets guys, whatever. But there is, like, sometimes you need a guy like Tommy Pham to come in and put the jumper cables on. On we're easing into this, guys. We're easing into the development. Well, no, let's go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. 100%. Like you need those personalities. You need those guys that's going to be like, yo, let's go. You need those firecrackers. And I think that's sometimes where the game gets lost a lot of times, is where you look at it and be like, okay, who's the leader of this team? What direction is this going? I'm not talking about a coach or, who can come in and change the culture of a team, because ultimately that's not the coach or the manager's clubhouse. It's the players' clubhouse, and the manager and the coaches are fully aware of that. So you have to have those guys that are consistently having that pulse for the team and be able to challenge guys, or else you're just going to have a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. And you also have to have the guy who's going to say, cut the crap.
Yeah.
I mean, give me you've been around a little bit. Give me some good examples of guys who have done that. And I know that guys have been phased out of this game. Believe me, we've had them on the podcast. A Brock Holt, a Mitch Moreland, a Rick Porcello, where once the analytics started coming into the equation, like they didn't have a chance. But at the same time, it's we've also seen teams, Julian, where throughout the course of the year, like you're rudderless. So anyway, give me some examples of guys that you've seen that sort of maybe have done what we're talking about, which analytics would suggest that it's not exactly the guy that you need, but it's really the guy that you need.
I would go back to even my first Edwin, my first year there. He had a really good year in like 2018. Like it was like a resurgence year, and like I remember he was sort of the following year, Billy Beane didn't want to bring him back, and so he was like, but he had like a 2.9 like a 2.80 ERA or something like that. And Billy Beane did not want to bring him back. And he's like, why? And he was like, well, because your FIP was such and such. And he's like, what the hell is a FIP? Like, I've never heard of a fucking, like, what the hell is a FIP? And so me and him are sitting in Arizona and he's unsigned. And I'm interviewing. He's like, bro, I've never heard of FIP. What's FIP? Did I get the guy out or not? Like, what's FIP? And so like the players like really wanted him back. Bob Melvin really wanted him back, but front office didn't want him back. And granted, it probably was the best decision. But the year before that, like if you just looked at his FIP, you'd be like, okay, get this guy out the league. But if you looked at him in the clubhouse and how he had Matt Chapman like under his wing, like not just like pitchers, like position players, Matt Chapman, like Matt Olson, Simeon, all these guys, and go down to the bullpen, Lou Trevino, like the rotation, it Sean Mania, like it goes on and on and on. And if you ever talk to anybody, everybody was saying like, oh yeah, that's probably why he ends up always getting all these jobs and playing for all these different teams, even though his numbers aren't there, is because he is that clubhouse guy. It's because everybody does rave about how good of a character guy he is. I think that necessarily matters. And that really sort of catapulted them into the playoff conversation that year because his presence meant something.
And guys know too, in front offices, the funny thing is, Julian, that front offices, when this topic comes up, they're like, oh yeah, of course we evaluate. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a little of everything. Yeah. But then the guy with the 5.5 ERA, but the good spin rate,
yeah,
he's made available. Well, all right, we're gonna kick this guy to the curb because this is more important. So another guy that jumps to mind for me, which I was only around for a brief second, but I keep hearing it over and over, is another guy who was introduced to the podcast world recently, is Eric Hosmer. Like I've heard this about Hosmer. Like
I did too, especially with with Tatis and with the Padres and everything like that. People give like Hosmer so much slander, but dude, go look at the numbers. I don't care about what OPS. Fine, his OPS is 776. Who cares? But look at the totality of like his career. That's a really good career. Like he lived up to everything about being a first round pick that there is. Plus, he was the liaison between front office, the players, the manager, everything. And you just saw how he just connected with guys, even with Casas, right? He handled that Casas situation well. I was like, yeah, like I know he's the future. I know this is the guy, right? So it's just a matter of that person being comfortable in their own skin and being able to just see the game for what it is.
And he learned it from, he said he learned it from Raul Ibanez, right? Who obviously passes it to him. So it's one of those things where you when you know. I mean, when you know as a player, right? I mean, it's just Justin Turner comes in last year. And it's not like, and I always say the Rudy in the stool speech, because we can give examples of guys who have come in to clubhouses and said, I got to be a leader because my contract says I got to be a leader, because my service time says I got to be a leader. Well, it is what it is.
Or you're just Kike Hernandez that says you got to be a leader.
Yes, there you go. So
what are we doing here?
But Justin Turner, he comes in and it was like, he didn't say, hey, everyone gather around. He just did his stuff, eased into it. And then, by the time the first month of the season comes around, everybody knew who was everything filtered through that clubhouse. And I'll give you another one, Julian. The Arizona Diamondbacks last year, like they brought in Evan Longoria, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had on Hazen and Lovello, and they talked about Evan Longoria obviously didn't have a great year, but he was good enough to function, I guess, at third base. But as I think Hazen said there are some guys, there are some instances where, to your point, the coaches and the manager, it's not their message to give. You have to have the player give the message. And for Evan Longoria on that team, which I don't know if you know this, they made it to the World Series, but on that team, like he was the guy. Like you can say, he wasn't that great. And to me, they probably don't get through whatever trials and tribulations they went through, and they don't get to the World Series without having that guy whose stats probably weren't that good, who analytics showed that probably wasn't the best option there, but he was that impactful in another way. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, I'll give you one small anecdote. I remember the Cleveland trip last year, the Matt Dermody trip. But anyways, that was crazy. That was a crazy. But no. After one of the games, I remember Jarren Duran was like in this huge. He was getting into one of his funks, and you can tell he was starting to get in his head a little bit. And they had just lost, whatever. And then next to him is Justin Turner just talking to him after the game, like just shooting the crap with him, like in his ear, talking to him. Boom, boom, boom. Jarren Duran goes up the next day, goes 3 for 4. Year before that happened, Jarren talked about he didn't really have anybody to turn to, right? So he's just stuck there in his thoughts. doesn't necessarily have a the coaching staff person that you can go to, because I think, Huddy wasn't there at that point. Didn't really have any relationships with the players like that to that extent. And he always talked about Justin Turner. So that stuff really matters.
Yeah, you gotta have the guy. One that jumps to mind again last year, Trevor Story's interaction with Cassis. Like he said, sat down with him in the dugout an hour after the game. He made a big error, said that was the fork in the road. And another guy that you know well, Jackie Bradley Jr. Julian, I remember him. I think it was 14, 15.
Yeah.
Like he was lost in that clubhouse. And then Chris Young, I think, came in, and all of a sudden there was guys that like he could lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just another person. So I think that's a good example. Good job.
Yeah, for sure.
But so when you talk about, this is morphing into what I did say we're going to talk about, which is when you call up a guy, and this is in the first month of the season, this has been a huge topic of conversation, mainly because Jackson Holiday got called up. So Jackson Holiday comes up, he's not good, he gets sent back. And there's this, like, when do you call the guy up? When's the right time to do it? Do you need immediate results? Well, since I love science, one of the things that I've come to the conclusion is that you don't understand, like, that people go through, when you get called up, usually you're going to have a rough spot. Now, you might catch fire first off, right? And then have the rough spot, or you might have the rough spot and then get sent down. Mike Trout came on this very podcast and said it wasn't until, remember, he got sent down like to begin the year, the following year, after he did his debut. And then he comes back. But here's one of I think that one of the reasons this is happening, where you aren't getting a lot of shock and awe out of the gate, and then you ultimately get 48 straight fastballs like 2 months from your debut. And here's a reason why. Because before, they didn't have the information when you got up. Like, they were flying blind. Here's my prediction. Jackson Holiday gets called up 5 years ago. He's still up because, right. But now the minute he gets up, this is how you're going to pitch him from minute one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
100%. Or, I mean, like, and I think ultimately, like, Jackson will probably be fine, right? He's like, he comes from the lineage.
Well, again, Trout, I'll go back to Trout was fine. These guys are going to be fine. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But like you said, the information is like, I mean, sometimes it becomes too much, right? But like, especially with guys like that, where you're seeing like, okay, like he has a big swing, he has a big move that he probably is able to get away with in AAA. I mean, we talk about Rafi, right? Like he had to calm down his hand. So imagine like somebody like Jackson Holiday coming up. Of course, he doesn't have the credentials that Rafi has yet, and he has that huge move. It's like, well, that's probably going to get exposed a little bit. He's probably going to go back down there. He's going to be fine. But that just goes to show that, like, you can't necessarily depend on these guys ultimately right now to always be impact players. Like Tatis, Acuña's, those guys who just come up and just hit the ground running like that, those are guys are one of one, right? Like those are just anomalies. And I know people put Jackson, some people probably put him in that category with Tatis and Acuña. I've seen Jackson play. I don't necessarily see that level of player. But obviously, you're going to get a guy that's going to have a really great MLB career from what scouting reports say, from what obviously his lineage, his family, his lifestyle, the way baseball is just involved in just his entire being. You know he's going to have a really good career. But as Time Bloom and everybody always says, all the GMs and everybody says, success is never linear in the big leagues. Look at Houck. Like look how long it took Tanner Houck to figure out. I said for years, Tanner's a reliever. And all of a sudden he figures out, hey, I got to throw my best stuff and I don't need to throw 100 miles per hour. And all of a sudden he turns into this. And so you just don't know. You got to give these guys time to develop. You got to give them time to have experience and struggles. And ultimately, I think it's going to be fine. But it's also a point that you can't always depend on prospects to come up and be what you expect them to be from the get-go. You can't. Because it's not many that even become a lot of them even, weed out. We've seen that as well.
Yeah, well, it's two things. It's number one, like we said, the way that they're being approached because of the analytics, because of scouting reports. Let's be honest, because of scouting reports. And then there's the oh my goodness, you think Jackson Holiday ever went 1 for 29?
No, like 19 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even.
And
he never had a semblance of that.
Keep in mind, he's doing it. He's having to perform on a World Series contending team or a team that has World Series expectations, right? That have all these prospects that did work out when they came up, right? Like sort of Adley Rutschman. The minute he jumped into the big leagues, it worked out. But the difference between Adley had the college thing there, right? There were scouting reports that I read from the great Billy Owens, who said, from the A's who scouted him, said he'll be in the big leagues in 3 months. And this was when he was in college. Like, he's big league ready right now. So those are different. Those are two different things. You have Jackson coming from high school. He's 19, 20 years old. And you have a seasoned 23, 24-year-old. It took Gunnar Henderson a little bit of time to figure it out.
People forget, Julian. People forget about Gunnar Henderson, the rookie of the year. Go back and look at his April last year.
100%. Terrible. He was
terrible.
He was horrible. Yeah, I remember he was horrible in that series. So you got to give these guys time, and Jackson will be fine. But I think that just shows, like, if you're a contending team, you have to treat your prospects as like suspects until they prove you seriously. The prospects are just suspects until proven otherwise.
Yeah, put it on the new T-shirts. Let's go. TM, Julian McWilliams, TM. All right, last thing. If you can do whatever you want on your podcast, but since I have you here, give me your eye test guy. Give me the eye test guy for you, right now that you've seen play, you've watched play this year, and you're like, I like the cut of his jib. You know what I'm saying? We don't need to go to his Baseball Savant page.
Yeah,
I love Baseball Savant, but we don't have to. I like watching that guy play. Who is it?
I think right now, it would have to be between two people: Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah,
and obviously analytics jump off the page with him, and then Wilyer Abreu as well. Just the way they go about their business in terms of just playing hard all the time, right? Like, I always loved watching prime George Springer play, because it was like, it can be ugly, but it works because it's his game, right? I loved watching guys like Hunter Pence. Guys, it just doesn't look. It looks a certain way, but it works. I think those two guys, Tyler and Wilyer, they just bring it every day, and you see the intensity, you see the passion that goes into what they do, and I just enjoy watching those guys play. I'll also say this: I don't know if Ceddanne Raphael is a big league hitter, right? I don't know. The jury's still out on that. However, to do what he's doing defensively, going from center field in an important position, then having to play shortstop. I was talking to the great Ian Brown about this the other day. I said, that's sort of unbelievable that he's able to do that and be good at it, right? You just see how the infield is so much different with him at shortstop. There's just sort of this calming presence. They're not making as many errors. So from a defensive perspective, the eye test part with him, it's truly special.
Yeah, and one guy, and you saw him play in Oakland a lot. I was on a San Francisco station in spring training, and they were like, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, we didn't do this. I'm like, yeah, but you got Matt Chapman. Watching, and I haven't talked to the people with the Giants if it's taken root yet, but I love Matt Chapman as a guy. He can hit 240. Yeah. The way he plays third base is incredible, right?
He's I mean, I haven't seen, like, obviously, I mean, there's third basemen that go, but he's the best third baseman I've ever seen. Like, if you in his prime too, I mean, you go back, like he still is, but you think he moved in a little bit more, but like he was on the lip of the grass, right? When he took his position, he played his position like shortstop, and people would try to bunt on him, and it never worked. He would be back and he'd be coming in. I mean, there's so many different plays. He's unbelievable. Like and again, when I first got into the game, I'm like, yeah, but he hits 240. And the scout was like, dude, do you see this guy play third base? If a guy, like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, but he hits 240. And I'm like, okay, you don't know baseball. And I'm like, oh yeah, dang. Perhaps I don't know baseball because this guy's really freaking good.
But you said someday I will give you a T-shirt that says the eye test on it. So there you go. All right, excellent job. You're a star. Congratulations.
Thank you.